Let's go back in time. We're in antebellum Louisiana. The year is 1856. There's a story from this era that really sits on the razor's edge between documented history and some seriously chilling folklore. It's the legend of one single child who seemed to bring ruin, well, wherever he went.
Now, you might be wondering where a story like this even comes from. And look, this isn't some ghost story that's just pulled out of thin air. The narrative we're going to unpack today is actually pieced together from real historical remnants. We're talking court notes, personal journals, and fragments that history really tried to bury. These are the little pieces that survived, hinting at a story someone, somewhere, wanted to erase.
Okay, so at the very heart of this legend is a young enslaved boy. He was born in 1856 on a huge plantation right near the Mississippi River. And, from the very beginning, people knew there was something different about him.
He was described as being, well, unnaturally perceptive. The elders would whisper about how he seemed to understand things no child his age possibly could. It's like he could predict what adults were going to do, or he'd notice private conversations from across a yard. He just looked at the world as if he knew secrets that no one else did.
And another thing, unlike the other kids who would run around and play, he was just unnervingly quiet. He was an observer. He'd spend hours just watching, memorizing every little thing he saw. He learned tasks with a speed that just left adults completely bewildered. He was clever, he was strong, and he was always silent. And it was that quiet intensity that first started putting people on edge.
The fear didn't just pop up overnight. Nah, it started with whispers. Little things. Objects would move on their own, or just go missing when he was around. Perfectly healthy horses would suddenly get spooked for no reason. Livestock would die from these really strange causes, and people said that even as a baby, his cries were so sharp, so piercing, they left a mark on you. These small, unsettling events, well, they started to paint a very dark picture.
So you have all these whispers and strange occurrences, but soon they escalated into something way more concrete. The first major tragedy. This was the event that really shifted the boy's reputation from just being unusual to being seen as deeply dangerous.
It all kicked off in one of the older households on the plantation, and it started with that familiar pattern. Healthy animals suddenly falling sick, tools just vanishing into thin air. But then, it got so much worse. The family's youngest son, just a few years older than the boy, died within hours from symptoms no doctor could even begin to explain. And in the aftermath, that family's grief just curdled into suspicion, and all eyes turned right to him.
And that was the turning point. Any sense of him being just another kid was completely gone. You have to remember, in a closed community that's gripped by powerlessness, anything that's unexplained can quickly become seen as malevolent. Fear completely replaced familiarity. From that moment on, his every quiet movement was watched, it was analyzed, and it was feared.
But here's the really terrifying part. This devastating loss, it was not an isolated incident. Oh no, it was just the beginning of a terrifying pattern of destruction that soon began to spread to neighboring households, and it created this wave of panic across the entire region.
The pattern became undeniable. A second family, their master, wife, and all their children suddenly succumb to this mysterious, fatal disease. Then a third family loses all its livestock, their barn burns to the ground, and then they too perish from a sudden fever. And finally, a fourth family, a really wealthy, influential one, collapses under the exact same sequence of events. The connection was just impossible to ignore. At this point, the boy wasn't even seen as a child anymore. He'd become, in the collective mind of the entire community, a harbinger of doom. His presence wasn't just unsettling, it was seen as a direct signal of impending tragedy. He was an agent of a destruction that nobody could understand and nobody could prevent.
So this brings us to the community's desperate and, well, ultimately futile attempts to stop what was happening. As the fear grew and grew, people tried everything to regain control, but every single action they took seemed to only prove how powerless they really were.
They tried everything. They called in doctors who found no medical explanation for any of it. They tried confining him, separating him from everyone else, but the accidents kept happening. People tried just avoiding him, not speaking his name, but the illnesses continued to spread. Even punishment seemed to just make the misfortunes worse. Nothing worked.
The climax of this whole legend came at the final incident, the complete and total decimation of yet another prominent, influential family. This catastrophic loss just erased any lingering doubts, any attempts people were making to rationalize what was going on.
It was the ultimate proof that no one, no matter how wealthy or powerful they were, was safe from whatever force seemed to follow this child.
In the aftermath of that, the entire community became paralyzed. Fear was now the ruling force. It dictated absolutely everything: who people spoke to, where they went, what they did. The social dynamics of the entire area began to revolve around one single terrifying goal: avoiding one small, quiet boy.
And that, right there, leaves us with the central question that makes this legend so enduring. Was this boy simply a product of the intense fear and superstition of the time? I mean, was he an incredibly cunning and intelligent child who just learned how to manipulate his environment to terrifying effect? Or was there something else at play here? Something that defies any logical explanation? The records give us the story, but the truth? Well, the truth remains buried with the past.